Thank you very much for joining me. Polina here, chatting to you a little bit about the year. We have a beginning in March, we have the equinox, and I'm sure many of you have heard me talking about the beginning and the end of the year. When does it actually happen? To me, it is definitely in between Pisces and Aries as we come upon the equinox on the 21st. It is the most natural time, I trust, to begin, and I also trust that there is a certain type of large quantum energy change between the sign of Pisces and Aries for a reason, because it is such a chop and change, it is such a quantum shift. We can do so many things in Pisces to help ourselves do that well, and we can also prepare this year and other years to come by basically understanding the tides of nature. And the tide is relaxation, separation, dilution, letting things go, letting things mellow, and allowing time to basically heal some wounds, and allowing ourselves not to have to push on through and do things as much anymore, but rather just accept the natural tides and accept the natural changes which sometimes occur at this time. So for me, the sign of Pisces is a sign of a very, very, very ancient person that is ready to leave this world, or it is a sign of somebody who already left or hasn't been born yet. So this is one of the most mystical signs in the zodiac. I trust that if you study astrology, you probably already know all of this stuff, and I don't have to go through the basics with you. But because of this, sometimes we get very lost. In today's society, we don't really celebrate death. We don't really understand what it means to be before or after life, and we don't really want to know that. And I think it is crucial for us to understand that without the disintegration, we cannot have the next beginning. Just as with any gardener, you probably know that to create a very nice humus in your soil, you have to have a certain amount of decayed matter. That is just how things are. So Pisces is not just decay for me this year. I feel that it is also a time to really secure ourselves in a way that we don't really know, or we don't want to know all of that which is. So this means that the ox year has to begin in this kind of slightly semi-diluted way. And I trust that is good, because by the end of ox we have tiger, and I'm already kind of planning for that. And tiger says, don't do it yet unless you really have the tools and the meaning behind what you're going to start to perhaps aggressively or emotionally do. So before, we have to really understand that which we have had in order to know what we do have now. So what I mean here is ox is going to have to become very, very strong and sturdy later in time, but right now I'm seeing quite a lot of you guys get really, really harsh and hard and emotional even, and very, very hard-nosed, hard-edged about life. And I think right now, at the beginning of ox, it is very, very good for us to dilute this time, because ox is a very hard-nosed energy anyway. We're going for a metallic golden ox this year around, so that's going to add to that intention and that know-it-all, know-how that ox will provide during this specific time. And I think to try and trust this dilution for now is a sure way to ensure a little bit less chaos in our lives, because what is chaos but unmet expectation anyway? And I trust that for many of us, for a lot of us, it is quite robust already, what we think we want and who we think we are and what we think we know. So the Pisces time during this particular year, I trust, is going to start to help us not do that so much, as we are going to go through quite a robust spectrum of changes. And I also see that with the global shifts and the global changes in the world, there's going to be need to stay a little bit less hard edge, because we just can't afford it yet, or not right now. And then by July 2021, we can already have a little bit more strength and a little bit more courage, and that golden ox really starts to glow. But at this point, because I don't believe that the Piscean sign is really that compatible with ox, or that compatible with the overall solar glow that we're going through right now, I feel that we have to stop feeling so much pressure and pain to conform and get things through, and on the other hand also function. So like this is a very interesting thing. Ox for me is setting up a tide, a large tide, and that is control, functionality, stuffing things into a box to a degree in order to be able to really provide the next level of evolution. And at the same time, it feels to me that Pisces cannot go this way, and it never will. So the reason that I'm kind of a little bit concerned here is that we have two bigger cycles to go through here, and there are going to be larger ones still coming during this particular tide. One is recognizing why you don't really want to do things, okay, that you probably have already signed up to, which is very, very scary sometimes also for me, you know, recognizing that a whole layer, a whole slice of my expectation and perception is done. And the second thing that I'm seeing that is quite big during this period is realizing that particular things are not possible, and they're not needing to be. So one is about just letting go and understanding that you no longer have to participate in a longer scheme or a longer tide, and the other one is understanding that it is not possible to be there. And that to me is a very, very helpful reminder. So for a lot of people this can be not necessarily traumatic, but quite disenchanting. And disenchantment and feeling unwell or uncool about a situation is very, very difficult in this particular story. So we have this golden ox year, which is about keeping things real and robust and knowing how things work and doing things on purpose and in a certain kind of quantum time. And there we have it, you know, there are certain things that we have really, really, really wanted to do, or that we did, that we just can't do now. And I feel that with many, many lives and with many, many people and expectations and karmas and truths, it is not going to be just an easy letting go. So there are ways in which an ox will clench and wish to put all in a box, and Pisces is not going to at all allow it, especially with this very, very communicative and open and in a way kind of jolly aspect to the north and south nodes and things. And we've also just gone through, of course, the full moon on the 27th. Actually, I'm recording this on the 27th. So this very, very interesting communicative moon that is, you know, at the end of February is already going to start to ask us that question, like, wouldn't you rather just, you know, sit down and relax? Wouldn't you rather just like chat to your friend, like, you know, how much time do you really have for this? So there's like this kind of like sly and slightly wispy emotional energy before this month of March, and I think that that sometimes can really confuse an ox. And to me it feels like a very, very intense feeling is also pushing us into some kind of creative strategy, because we've got Jupiter, Saturn, and to a degree Pluto also behind the Sun. We have this very, very strategic mind that sometimes takes over also in a North Node, Gemini, and we have this very, very mighty or big sense of it all. And I feel that some people just want to do it now. They want to do it on purpose. They want to create new style of life or new sense of the world. I feel this Gemini North Node is actually going to push quite a lot of us to change the way that we style things, the way that we live, and the way that we contain. And that container is going to have to shine, because all that stuff that we're putting into a box or a prism or a sense of perfection or reality, all of these reality checks that we're getting in order to really, really spruce up and polish up on our worlds, as we are in Ox year with Gemini North Node. It's really, really intense actually. And this Jupiter, especially in the 12th house to the Sun, really asking us, like, are you really ready? Like, and also Venus is next to the Sun this whole month. She's traveling with the Sun. This is a really mighty, mighty emotion for a lot of us. We really, really want to be there. We really want to do it, and we really, really want to feel it. And sometimes some of us might not really be available to ourselves yet to really, really pull things together, you know, sometimes to really for example, market this brand at the end of the month. Great time for any kind of show-off energies by the end of March, as we go into Aries in the beginning of the new year. All of this kind of like showy, crystalline energy that is asking for that next quantum level of what is perfect, for a lot of people is not reachable yet, and we're not yet done with the previous work. So how to master this month, I believe, is to just see that you are done. When there are certain voices, when there are certain frequencies, there's certain people, there's certain experiences, there's certain life education. And for many people, it comes in different ways. For some people, it is just something that is no longer possible, is no longer able to be achieved. For some people, it is just no longer in the mind. For some people, it is no longer open or available. Some people just cannot find the energy, the courage, or the concentration levels to do something. And that has to be fine. And that sometimes is not easy also for me. I'm an ox as well, turning 36 this year. And I've also found that for the oxes, out there, it is difficult sometimes not to really feel brilliant, and not to really know how to do that next step, or how to really contain the energy for that next generation of evolution. And I think that for many of us, the time has come to really, see things clearly and find things in ease, and no longer judge ourselves and picture our hearts and also other people's hearts to a degree as to what we should have, would have, could have been doing by now, or how life should have, could have, would have panned out. So that's something that I think is very, very courageous for me and other people to realize, is that we don't really have to sugarcoat things. It is or it is not going to stand. And Pisces is an interesting wispy sort of energy that is going to ask some big hard truths. So it's like that wispy energy, or that light-hearted, sort of slightly maybe facetious, slightly exotic, slightly murmuring energy, as Mercury is going to be behind the sun throughout this month. It is going to kind of travel along with us incognito, and it is going to help us see things in a better, more clearer way after it all ends, or after it starts to become clear. And that to me feels like a very difficult time for very hard-nosed and practical individuals. Mars is going through a very, very intense transformation. Mars is going from Taurus to Gemini and is meeting the North Node eventually. I don't feel that it is that particular in Gemini this time around, though usually Mars and Gemini does seem to lead us through a wheel of precision. I feel it might be also a little bit playful this time, and a little bit jolly, and sometimes we don't really see the humor in that which we experience until after. And I feel to really get through this particular time and do it well and do it soundly and not lose peace of mind, it's better to understand this Mars-Mercury situation. And to me, it feels like a very, very fun, loving, actually, and curious time. They're going to be at a beautiful square in a communicative signs sometime through March. And I feel that is a very, very nice and maybe slightly facetious, but also like slightly nervous energy, in which nature and time just tell you not to worry about it, and they just give you that hearty feeling if you allow them to. It's kind of like a friend telling you off a little bit about the time that you've spent doing certain things, and it's like life gives you a pat on the back. And sometimes it is like, oh, better luck next time, or it's okay, it's not all bad, and for some people that is very, very hard, not because it is a condescending time at all. It is just that we can't accept that lightness, and in certain cultures, in certain families and tribes, it is not known of when life just gives you like toodles, when life gives you that haha, because we don't really want to believe that is what life is. Because we've come from certain tribes, families and formations in which tribal life is hard, it's heavy stuff, and for some people life is very serious. It's a serious joke, it can't just be a funny one. And I think in this way, the best way to go in Pisces is to let things come out as they will. And for some people, there's going to be some crying before the laughter comes. And for certain people, it's just about realizing that whatever is laughing within you is actually kind of a good thing. And that sometimes is hard. For me, it's difficult also. That little light-hearted spirit that was always kind of in you and never truly could come out should probably start coming out now. So this is when you see money and finances is not difficult at all. It's just a funny little game. You no longer trust that person because you see the humor of your experience, or you can see where they're acting out and playing a clown, playing a certain character. You don't actually any longer want to go to that place because it is clownish for you. It is like slightly grotesque, or it has a slightly weird culture, like a weird nature. So the way to see it all now, I feel, is kind of weird and goofy, and letting that feeling of sentimentality slowly come off. Now, the way that I'm seeing it is very hard for some people, because in Pisces, some people really love to feel that sense of sensitivity, sentimentality, and that very, very good vibe sometimes that people get from that weird thing called sadness. And also nurture. The way that we nurture sometimes is very sentimental, and the way that we feel about life is nostalgic, or the way that we like to feel within a certain group of people, or how we feel the best within a certain situation is slightly kind of nurturing, slow, feminine, lazy, maybe sometimes sad and sulky. There are certain ways in which people really, really like to trust life, and there is a certain type of tide in which that is supported as well by life itself. Slightly sulky, slightly sort of bougie energy is coming out now, and I've already talked about this during the full moon in Virgo on the 27th of February, that this bougie feeling is coming through us now. Some people, haven't had enough time or power or seduction or love or emotionality or creativity, and this very, very pristine energy of Mars walking into Gemini also is underlining this very, very stylish, actually at a trine to Jupiter as well, this very, very stylish, very aromatic, very romantic way in which one perceives themselves and other people. And that can sometimes lead to hope as well. So I feel that it depends on you. So sometimes there are ways in which we are trusted to experience and experiment certain types of themes as such, and sometimes it is not really the best way to go. It's not sometimes our hearts that really want a certain experience, situation, or conclusion, and it's not really us that really feels this way. It's more like the culture of today, or the way that we find ourselves stylish. And I also feel style and decadence really hold us here in this Venus conjunct Sun through this whole month, actually, pretty much. Because Venus is always going to underline what we don't have, and sometimes this bourgeois feeling, or this way in the world, this extreme way of flashing money, or flashing certain energy currents, and underlining, accentuating, wanting to be more beautiful, wanting to be more just, or wanting to be more wealthy. Any of this pursuit, or any of this exemplifying energy, especially as Venus walks into Aries, exemplification is really underlined here. Exemplifying energy can often, always, sometimes lead to a certain distance or dissatisfaction. And this, I think, we have to really go through, and some people have to experience that. And I've already talked about this to a degree in a full moon video for the 27th of Feb. There was already a wave of that, and it's going to start to really show when we are very much not what we really wanted to be, or not what we thought we were, or not as we think we are, and we want to make things even more this and that. I mean, a great example is plastic surgery, for example. A great example is people buying cars they cannot afford, and they have to work very hard to pay off. A very big example of this is enjoying certain people, involving yourself in certain type of experience, or involving yourself in certain type of even work or pleasure, anything that you actually cannot fully fulfill, afford, or take care of. And that I think is an important part of this cycle. So for example, adopting an animal right now, ask yourself 1200 times, do I really need to do this right now? Especially if it is an animal that you really feel is going to show you off to the world as a certain kind of character. We're grasping for characters during this time. We're going through dilution of spirit to a degree in Pisces, and for some people identity is very important. So for example, I want a Siamese cat because it matches the character that I want to create in my life, and that's a very, very strange idea. If you really think about it, do you really want to afford this type of life? Or for example, I would like to, fix my nose or bleach my hair, or I want to buy this very expensive item, or I want to be with this person who cannot love me, but I'm sure will. Everything like that, every kind of faith that you put in art and culture and the bourgeois way of life, or anything that you are doing in detriment to your own actual spirit and character, unconsciously is a very, very interesting sign of the times, I think, actually, and also of who you aren't. And the best way that I feel to really combat these narratives, especially if you're somebody who's very easily whisked away, or is very easily diluted in pleasure, or who is self-seeking through certain cultural, artistic, creative, even mental magias, I think it is very, very important to stay well and not get sick. And I think that this is something that I have to talk about maybe a little more than I even know. So illness, sometimes what we have in excess is poison to us, and we don't even know that. Sometimes there are certain things that we think are just part of the changing world, they're part of the times, they're part of the modern perspective. This is what a woman would wear these days, or this is how a child would dress, or this is the way that I would school my kids, or this is the type of thing I want to have in my home. And on some level, that is certain, and on some levels that is not. So sometimes it's like overeating, for example, indulging in a night of drink and then not knowing which way to go, having cramps, having headaches, having uncomfortable symptoms. And sometimes when you're having uncomfortable symptoms in your world, it is because of something unknown. And that is not usually actually that mysterious. That something unknown is something that you don't need. So for example, excess drink, excess pleasure, self-pleasure, for example, excess emotions, excess TV, excess involvement in certain media and certain study. And we don't really want to do it yet, but I think it is a nice time to sacrifice a little bit of time. And I know this is a little bit sticky for some. Not everybody wants to do this work right now. Dedicate just a little bit of time to your inner and outer experience, and just understand where you're getting rashes, where you're getting headaches, where you're getting strange behavior. How come there are parts of you that are unruly or feeling unworthy? What is that part of you that is feeling betrayed? How come you have 2 or 3 different minds about this one experience or this one fractal? What are these feelings? Where are they coming from? So all of this like unsolved stuff, mysterious stuff, can actually be put down to a very, 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 very simple formula. For instance, you've been drinking once a week, every week, then you're consuming copious amounts of food. The drink that you're drinking will not ever complement the food that you're having. So, for example, Italian diets, having this huge bowl of pasta, this giant lasagna at the same time as, complementing it with a giant glass of wine. It'll never work out. That's a recipe for disaster. Wine on its own is fine. If you are, for example, eating carbs, great idea to stay active and to stay self-supportive. It is absolutely fine to eat wheat for certain people, and for certain people it is not possible. And the main thing basically here is just to understand that just one night on the town with your friends, stuffing your face with beer, pizza, wine, everything like that, is going to cause a certain type of devolution. And that's not because you have anything to really work out inside. And sometimes, during Pisces, we ask these really hyper spiritual questions. We have this hyper spiritual mind, and it's very popular today, to its own detriment, to talk so much of what we think we have inside. And I think at the end of the day, it just lives in our guts, in our systems. And our chronic pain that we just can't go to the therapist about. We have certain things that we just don't want to see. Some people, this amazes me. This is really amazing. They can live with foot fungus all their lives, for example, and I'm not sure why their mind does crazy, creepy things. If you're living with a fungus in your body, inside or out, that's it. That is something that you might want to understand. If for example you have certain chronic fatigue or pain, there might be something hiding in your body that you don't really want to have. And there is something also to be said for medicines of all kinds, medical involvement of all kinds. Even during Aries, we have Sun conjunct Chiron. We have a very, very, very good sign for the healing, and that can sometimes take place in completely different ways. I mean, sometimes this is through mind. Sometimes a person can just adjust themselves through what they want and what they wish and what they desire, and Neptune really does help here. Sometimes just laying in a bath of water and feeling a little bit sore and wishing for God to take the pain away, that can sometimes also work. And it can also be very tempting during these slightly bougie energies to understand how things are and work things out on a more quantum level. And here we have all sorts of creepy people come to the surface. We have all sorts of pretend therapists, pretend people, quantum healers and energy ascenders and, sound bath operators and everything like that, helping us work with the mind. And for sure, for some of this, there is a reason, and a lot of this can actually work this time and this year, which is surprising to me, considering the boxing of Ox. We also have a very surprising essence in Venus, and just the way that Venus, which is blood, and Mercury, which is the energetic current, in the body, they're in a very, very interesting kind of space from each other. And we also have a very, very curious way in which they interact with Mars and with Neptune and communicative science. I don't believe this is for all people, but I do trust that blood healing the blood, can actually help a lot of things. If you want, you can take certain, even things like aspirin, the blood thinner. And I would actually prefer to say certain types of blood cleansing herbs. Liver also can deliver during this time, but it feels to me it's just about the blood and the feeling inside of the waterways of the body and the waterways of life. I also trust that a lot of very wispy and very, very fine energies can help us through. It feels like taking certain herbs and tonics can actually give us an incredible sense of peace during these times. Like, for example, St. John's wort for depression, or valerian for sleep and restfulness, chamomile, turmeric, even things like this, even things in your cupboard can actually help us all get things resolved. I mean, if you want to, you can play alchemist if you want to make, like, for example, a golden milk latte with turmeric and honey and things for yourself and your family. Even that little thing, playing doctor can be actually a really, really fine way to go. And there's not really that much to say about that. Sometimes when we keep things small, yes, we can pretend that we have the power to heal another. And that also has to be said for other things like ayahuasca, cambo, and those very hardcore topics, I suppose, of plant medicines, and our survival to a degree, depending on certain hallucinogen use in a way, and also us as a species evolving into greater sense of consciousness through these plants. I'm going to hold ayahuasca ceremonies at my house. These are actually ceremonial flowers we used for a first ceremony we just had a couple of days ago. And that has to be, I think, it for me to some degree. I also have to talk a little bit about this. Not to buy into things too much. That's another thing. I have to say, this is not a problem, but sometimes an oxia can give us a hard time, or can create certain ironies and difficulties and issues, and also tied in realities. Like, contracted realities if we sign up for things and we take things too far in our minds. So for example, with ayahuasca, I'm using this as kind of like a method of self-teaching and helping others. That is going to have to go one day, and I understand that. I understand that is also relevant to explore. One day, many things that we are tied up into future partners and relationships and greater generation of money, cryptocurrencies, ideas and ideals, and certain significances that we sometimes really evolve into in Pisces. If something really like comes through your door and you feel like there's something very big in the air, that can sometimes be an unconscious ego trip. And also I trust that for some people there's going to be a very, very unhealthy way out. So for example, in my case with me, I'm going to secure myself in a sort of a semi-certainty that I will, perhaps one day serve medicine. That is going to have to change, and I have to also understand that there is no purpose or beginning to it. It is kind of like a murmur through time. And though there is a very, very big quantum good within it, and it's coming to me at a very interesting, significant time of my life, with the Jupiter return and everything, there's going to have to be a very, very sincere apology or a very sincere disintegration or dissolving within all this, but it can take place now. So there's something that I also have to say about relationships with anything, relationships with plants, spirits, with medicines, with a person, with a certain culture or significance. You have to realize things in a way. And to some degree, women are prone to this, I think, a little bit more often than men. Relationships, relationship to a substance, a relationship to a belief system, a relationship to a version of yourself, or a culture, or even like a face of God to a degree, is not going to help us here. So sometimes during these times, especially people that are lonely or feel separate, can sometimes create for themselves illusionary or semi-illusionary worlds, and in these worlds there is nothing actually that much there. So before we start to evolve any kind of mystery or mystical self-perception or concept of what life is or what love is, we've got to basically understand that we cannot fulfill that for a long time. And I'm also seeing that some of us are walking into something that can only last a few years. So for example, if you are right now creating a relationship. So at this point, for example, I'm creating, self-exampling here, creating a space for ayahuasca, alone, and creating my bedroom into a semi-ceremonial space or a partially ceremonial space. This has to eventually start to let itself go, and allowing that to be okay. Some of us are creating very, very incredible mind for certain risk-taking and certain appeal in the world. Some people are creating certain version of themselves that doesn't actually really need to come through, or doesn't need to actually stabilize and create itself as real. For certain people, there's going to be, for example, miscarriages also during this time, if they're really set on creating life, for example, right now. Or there's going to be a set of laws that will work against you later. So it's very easy to create for yourself something that is very powerful and very, very amazing, and then only in just half a day or even in 3 or 4 months start to lose it, or start to no longer be able to generate it. And for that reason, I feel it's really important to allow things to wash through and to let things wash out. And one other concept for this time is just water, and letting waters of time be, and allowing another person to leave also, or letting another person to be afraid or not needed, and leaving things behind. Nothing really here has to be done sturdy. And sometimes, at the beginning of the month specifically, we think March is, such an exciting time for so many of us to really get things real, as we think this is the 3rd month of the year, and that is a lie. It is not a 3rd month. But we can sometimes, start to become on a level first, and I do trust that for some people there is a very, very weird, even naughty, awkward, ironic, silly way in which they can suddenly be number one. That I feel is already happening for some people in my life and in my life as well. That oneness or that firstness or that premium self can actually come out through this time earlier than we thought. So, I mean, we used to being able to be the one, be the premier version of self in Aries, and that is still going to go ahead by the end of this month. But I do trust that some people are very early with things, and for those of us who have really started to release and let go and allow life to be a tickle, like a ticklish little game, or like a funny joke, and sometimes a very, very actually easy puzzle to solve if we don't think about it too much. We just allow it to be a tickle and like a goofy, fun, loving feeling. And for those people that are ready to reveal it to themselves as kind of like a sort of nonchalant, sort of insignificant sometimes formula, and we let things trickle, we let the waters wash us inside and out. We let those people come and go. We allow the story to be one thing today and a completely different thing tomorrow. We let this tipsy-turvy certainty kind of like come out of its previous facets and start a completely new journey. We let things be insignificant. We let the culture that we're in to be laughable or to be irrelevant. We allow that bourgeois energy to come through as a kind of show-off energy that we need to eventually giggle about. We can allow other people to be a little bit ironic for us. We can let the whole world go. And for some of us, yes, in the state of the Joker and the clown, as to me, Gemini is kind of the king of clowns on some level, with North Node there and Mars walking into it as well. There are certainties, and there's also like this big level of hope that we can give ourselves through just basically laughing it off, washing it out, and being in joy, allowing things to come clean, letting other people come through and disappoint us sometimes, at the same time as take our breath away. And we can be also all of those things and more, and also letting that inner Joker, which to me to a degree is the inner shaman, come out, the person with the feathers and the colorful clothes, with a serious face sometimes, that does a little dance. I know that sounds really, really rude in a way. But if we are looking at the modern clown, or the way that people heal each other through humor or through unusual, maybe sometimes even erratic or irrelevant behavior, which is partially where, for me, parts of shamanism are. It's not in the stoic old man, with the mushroom, it's not in the deer head, over the skull. It's not in the drumming. It's not necessarily in that seriousness. It's actually in the facetiousness and the gorgeousness of life that can actually stream through a person. To my knowledge of myself and others, I trust that some of the greatest shamans, or the greatest healers and jokers, to me were one and the same. It was more about seeing the goofy side of life and helping the body and the mind to laugh things off. I mean, why is it kind of easy to do an exorcism for certain people? Why is it easy to work with certain shamanic drugs? It's not because they are so super cultured and super relevant. To some degree, that is what gives a person faith in who they are, relevance and culture that is still a part of a giant slice of ego. But the main thing that I'm feeling is that laughter and joke is what really keeps things going behind the scenes. And why, for example, some people are famous in the media, like modern day shamanism. A lot of entertainers out there today, even Hollywood-based entertainers, are just shamans in disguise, and people that can actually make people laugh. Tina Turner was a great shaman, for example. I mean, to me, there is a lot of worth in that concept of truth that is laughed off, giggled off, jiggled off, shaken off. And some of us really have it within us to nurture ourselves in this way now. And I'm not saying that the truth belongs to the Joker here on a very, very large scale. I'm just letting you know that to some degree, some people are already wearing their brightest feathers. And why is this? Even before Aries comes, this huge gush of energy can come through us. And where we are there is no joke. So I think that There are some people, there are some vibrations out there that are basically looking at us as transcendent beings and allowing us to be that full, which is basically a sign of the greatest mind. To me, this is one of the greatest minds. The presence, which is just color, just color. And it doesn't really want to hurt anymore, it doesn't want to speak so slowly anymore, it doesn't want to present itself or barter itself to anybody else anymore. It just makes essence, it just makes finesse from itself. And I think that is the psychedelic nature of our universe, this inevitable change, I think, with all of us is going to happen one day and in one life or the next. We're never going to ask the questions again. We're just going to vibe in the ultimate, juiciest way. And it feels to me that we have to, on some level, and this is a true sign of the times, when we talk about the age of Aquarius and everything like that, we're in this really incredible space right now to just say it like, I want juice, I want juice, I want a juicy time, like I want to be the juicy person, like I just want to be the fun, I just want to eat mango and meditate on top of the hill and then have a laugh, roll down that very hill and then eat more mango and more fresh fruit. There are some ways in which we are, I feel, no longer disturbed by things as well, and I think that has to be recognized, that in essence there are certain things that just don't even hold our gaze anymore. And for many people that's come true for a long time now. For me, it's just starting to materialize. For example, I no longer want to hurt about my family. I no longer want to dig in there, And that is actually something that is coming through to me very strong for this particular year. And I have to say that with the yearly reports that I'm still working on, so many people, for me at the moment with the yearly reports, I'm noticing that I'm also growing out of a certain spectrum of information or energy or social decay through no longer wanting to work with shadow and no longer wanting to pick things apart. And I think that there are some of us that are going to start to just get real, get full, get emotional, get energetic, get free, and wish for things to be new. And I think that is going to bring a huge cycle to an end for most people, as we're no longer glamorized within trauma states. We're no longer chewing things over for such a long period of time in order to make it real or to make it just or to make it make sense anymore. And that, I think, has to be seen as a very, very large quantum leap for most people in the world, as we're going to understand that sulking about and wanting to rummage through the previous dimensions of our beings, wanting to realize who was mother, who was father, at this point of our evolution as a species will not be sustainable. And it will come back, it will return, these cycles of wishing to find the components in the previous art, previous world, recycling, previous generations, trying to learn more about your life through the lives of another. That is going to start to come back. But that, I believe, is going to be a washed over business. And for most of us that have done the karmic work, the shadow work, and they had to really go through the dark night of the soul and, whatever, we have got it. I think that to a point we can't polish it any longer. We can't polish that rock, that stone any longer. And for some reason also I feel that some of us just have to go, we just have to leave things. We can't any longer ask a question. So we can no longer look an abuser in the face, or look at our jobs and our cities, our situations, and ask why. Can't you see me? Can't you fulfill me? Can you not help me? Some of it can still be done if people are very, very romantic about these types of things. But for most of us, I think these cycles are done, and I think that we have to be through with a lot of us, wishing for, in a way, pain to stabilize us or to show us what is the next state of the story, because for some people only pain is an associative concept. So to be futuristic is very, very, very real, and to be new, I think, is very, very able for some people. You don't have to do this yet, but I think that for those that are already kind of bored of this report, I mean, it is a very long report, it's 45 minutes almost, but what I'm saying is, For certain people, there is an almost ready chance to take just to be free. And I think that freedom as a concept is going to start to get very large, very big in the next couple of years. And it also feels to me that just being true and being you is the only way now. We have polished up enough. We have polished up on sinning and winning and feeling and thinking and knowing for ages. And the way that I feel most of us are going to really quantum shift ourselves in the new era, the new age, is through just being, and having this ability to just feel good, and doing that thing that we're going to do anyway, and being proud of the fact that it all is as it is, and being proud of our grandmothers, grandfathers, being welcoming to ourselves, being welcoming to the greater universe, and just starting out fresh always. In the weird way that is possible to achieve in Pisces, even though, I say that for most people, most of us, for most reasons, it is a sign of disintegration. We now have to leave things be and allow things to kind of warp and no longer be available. But within ourselves, I feel there is a greater, more robust, colorful and practical rainbow truth that I trust is going to eventually maybe self-corrupt and regrow its wings. It's going to go through its own cyclical change, but they're going to be, I feel, ghosts of the past that are very, very easily diluted through faith alone. Neptune activated by the Sun, also faith alone, and Venus conjunct Neptune. There's going to be a certain way in which we are just going to fulfill, and we're going to just burn through the previous mishaps or the current ones. And I do very much trust in faith healing during these particular times, and faith alone also, and faith and believe and trust in some greater currents or greater things beyond the details of life. So thank you very much. I hope this wasn't too confusing, as Pisces sometimes is, as I am also. I hope that you had fun. Thank you for sticking it out for the 47 minutes now. I hope that you feel good and that Aries helps you to really belong. I will do another fortifying video for the Aries switch over and the beginning of the new year and the equinox change. So congratulations for the ending and the beginning. I hope everything is fine. If you want to catch up on your own sign by Ascendant, Moon, Stellium, Sun, please check out my Patreon channel in the links below. Also, if you want to, can still, I suppose, purchase the almanac for the year to come. And if you want more time with me, hang out with me, and I'll read for you, that is also possible. Thank you very much. Enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Bye.